Hi everybody, here's Diana from Young Theater. Welcome to our next happiness webinar. This time the topic is happiness across cultures. So as you just see, happiness across cultures just matches our Congress topic, which will start in July and will take place in Finland. But today, Devin McCormack from RW3 is going to tell us something about happiness in terms of an intercultural perspective. So, yeah, right now I would like to forward to Devin, please.
Hi everyone. I hope everyone's having a good day or a good evening, depending on where you are. I'm so excited to be part of Young Theater and have such a great topic with happiness across cultures and enhancing happiness through cultural awareness. That's really a wonderful topic. And I'm able to use what I know from where I work, RW3 Culture Wizard, which is a great resource to share that knowledge with you. A little bit about RW3 Culture Wizard it's a great company. It was established in 2001 by the founders Charlene Solomon and Michael Schell, and they have been dedicated to the intercultural learning field for over 30 years. Culture Wizard is our flagship online learning platform. It contains learning tracks on a variety of things, but some things such as global leadership, team effectiveness, international assignment, tons of country-specific information. We also deliver facilitated workshops and learning experiences on tailored topics in either a half-day or full-day formats. And at the end of the presentation today, we are going to have contact information in case you want to know anything about RW3 Culture Wizard, to share with anyone or just to increase your awareness. So who's here today? I'm the one on the right, Devin Jean McCormack, and I'm the Manager of Learning RW3 Culture Wizard. And I also have with me today Sean DeBurke.
Hello everyone, my name is Sean DeBurke. I'm Director of Learning at RW3 Culture Wizard. We're both based in New York City, and I'm delighted here to support Devin as a producer of the webinar.
Today, our webinar, we're using the GoToWebinar platform. So just to kind of briefly familiarize everyone with that, if you are unfamiliar with it, we are going to keep the phones right now on mute because we have a great turnout today, which is wonderful. And we may, unmute later on, but for right now, we'll keep those on mute. And throughout the whole presentation today, there's going to be some participation through polls and questions. So I want everyone to be able to locate on their GoToWebinar dashboard the questions and chat section. If you have anything throughout the webinar that you want to ask, send that on there, and we'll be keeping our eyes on that, and we can address that as we get any questions. And there's also going to be a recording of the session. Should be available shortly after today's webinar that you can share with people or look back at what we discussed today. Our agenda today we've split into 3 sections. The first is going to be what makes up happiness around the world. The second, what are some best practices when dealing with different cultures and the topic connecting to happiness. And then we'll finish up today with what are some of the best places to look for helpful information as a resource and how you can use that. So let's begin. What we've done today is taken a holistic approach to looking at happiness around the globe as opposed to looking at a specific culture or countries individually. By having that more general approach, we're hoping to be able to reach more and address more in the time which we have today. What makes people happy? This is where I want to see if we can all start that interactive process for today. And I would really love for you to share what are some things that make you happy. It can be anything that you come up with, and then we'll also have a poll following that shortly as well. But just share anything that you have, and we'll let that be shared.
So at the moment we have a poll open, so if you can go ahead and cast your vote, what makes you happier, materialism or an experiential type of happiness? All right, thank you for voting.
Oh, geez, that was all right. So in terms of the vote, 100% of the people involved said experiential is the happiness that they would choose, and it seems to make them happy, which is great. I fully agree with you. Either answer would have been accepted, but I definitely agree with the experiential vote. So what you have on your screen now, we've come up with a variety of things that people can suggest when it comes to examples of what makes them happy. And we separated those into the two different categories which you see. And I do want to point out that, you know, there are things on one side, on each side actually, that can go back and forth depending on how you're looking at it, such as travel or music. Depending, maybe you're paying to go for a concert or you're paying for a huge vacation. Those can go on either side of that list that we have there. Neither is less important, just definitely a way to categorize it and be aware of it. So we found that most people really, it was the experience that carried that happiness, and this is reinforced by a study done by Time Magazine. It covered a wide range of topics, but the common thread really was that it's all about the personal connections, you know, time spent with your friends and family and being surrounded by those people that you hold dear to you. I think when you look back on any experiences that you have or your past, there are memories that stand out. And usually those memories are the ones that are spent with people doing something, with someone you care about. You know, not to say that maybe that time you bought the new iPhone was momentarily happy, but over the grand scheme of things, those memories that involve people and experiences seem to stand the test of time. So what we want to look at is, you know, is culture having an effect on happiness? And that's what we're here for today. So what I want to share with you now, this is the RW3 CULTUREWIZARD Culture Calculator. It's a great tool that we have. It's set up in a survey format, and there's about 40 questions that are asked. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. And what it does is identifies where your preferences would land in terms of the 8 dimensions that you can see on your screen: hierarchy, group, relationships. By comparing yourself and recognizing where you land to other countries that you might be involved with, it's a really great way to identify any potential gaps or potential challenges, and you can prepare for those better by being aware. So you can see on the screen, with this case under the relationship, the differences, you know, there's definitely extreme when it comes to those falling on the interpersonal end versus the transactional. So that's something you would want to be aware of and prepare for if you know that that interaction is going to occur. What we have here, a few countries that we've highlighted. The scale was created using the CULTUREWIZARD Culture Calculator tool, and being aware of where each country might land on a different dimensional scale is a great indicator of where an individual may land. But it is not an end-all, be-all sort of situation. There are definitely individuals from every country and culture that are going to differ from where their country as a whole might land on any given scale. So definitely keep that in mind when using a tool like this and any information that you're looking up. So if you're looking at this scale, this is the relationship dimension. So on the left-hand side, you're going to have the interpersonal end. These are going to be countries and people that place more value on relationships and building those and utilizing those relationships. And this could be a signifier that people from these areas are going to find greater happiness with relationships and those experiences that are connected with people, as opposed to maybe those on the transactional end on the right-hand side, where they might be finding greater satisfaction or happiness with material, the material side that we came up with earlier for happiness examples. Another example when you're talking about a dimension would be the group dimension. So if you think of someone who is from the United States and someone from Japan, the United States is definitely, as you can see, more individually oriented, whereas people from Japan are going to be group oriented. They're really deriving a strong sense of identity and self-worth through that group affiliation. So, you know, most Japanese are gaining satisfaction from that group success, which is leading to a group happiness as well as individual happiness, whereas people from the United States or people ranking similar to the United States might gain greater happiness for an individual recognition as opposed to that shared acknowledgement. So this is where you can really start to see the cultures playing into how they view happiness and how it's portrayed in their life. So what does happiness look like? We've talked a little bit about what it could be and how people view that, but I'd like to know if you would just share a quick word or two potentially of what is an example or a symbol of something you see it and that just instantly sparks the idea of being happy, or that's the recognition for happiness. So if you just take a quick moment and we'll just share some of those thoughts, that would be wonderful.
So go ahead and locate the questions area of the GoToWebinar dashboard and just type in a word or two about what Devin has just requested that connects to what makes you happy or what you've seen to make other people happy. Symbols, things, activities. We're curious to know the diversity of perspectives that we've got today on this webinar. Okay, I see someone here has written kids, children. I see someone that says sleeping, which definitely can make us happy, especially when we're tired. Smiling. The beach.
These are great. These are all things we were thinking, and you guys are just reinforcing. That's
a good
great.
book. That's a really good one. A good book. Any others?
Awesome. Those are all wonderful. Those are great, and we agree with them 100%. So let's take a look here. What's really kind of challenging about happiness is defining it. And the concept of happiness is just one that is so different and can mean so many different things to different people, and it can also change throughout your life. So what makes you happy when you're a child is going to change when you're an early adolescent, and that is going to change again when you become older, and the experiences that you have definitely affect your perception of happiness, which is great to keep in mind. So what I really like is someone had mentioned smiles as representative of being happy. So I love these photos. You have your obvious, you see those smiles on the girls in the bottom corner, especially the one on the right. She seems to just be genuinely so happy. Her smile is throughout her whole face. It's wonderful. She is genuinely happy, and you can see that. But what I really like is with happiness, it doesn't have to be represented with a smile. So you have a few photos there where perhaps you can't see that smile, but you might not know, maybe the gentleman in the top corner, he's sitting there and he's watching his grandkids play and thinking about what they're going to do when they get older and what they could become. So it's definitely always more than that smile, so you have to make sure that you're looking beyond that. It might not always be there for you to see, but it can still mean that that person is absolutely happy. So now I'm going to test you all and see how intelligent we are as a group, which is, I'm sure, going to be right on. I'd like for everyone to participate in this poll of which country do you believe is the happiest. So your choices are Japan, the United States, Switzerland, and Brazil. So we'll take a few moments and just have you all vote there.
All right, looks like we've got everyone voted. So let's take a look at the results. So 50% of you believe that Switzerland is the happiest country in the world, and 50% report Brazil.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's great. So thank you, everyone, for participating in that. On the following slides, we get into a couple different surveys and reports, but all information that surrounds the topic of happiness. But this question we pulled from the World Happiness Report. This report launched in 2012. It was based on research that was collected by economists and scientists that were analyzing factors that made people satisfied. Data points were including life expectancy, freedom to make choices, as well as social support. So on your right-hand side, you're going to see the results of that report that they found. I mean, you're looking at that list, and some first reactions for me noticing the top 10 were definitely, a majority of those are Scandinavian countries. It seemed to be very concentrated within where those were found, and they're all ranking it's a scale of what, 0 to 10, 10 being the most happy. So it's really interesting to look at that. So let's take that report and move forward. So, the Swiss are the happiest people on the planet. That was the conclusion of the UN World Human Report, Happiness Report. And so on the right, we still have that report again listed there for you to see. On the left now, we have the Positive Experience Index. This is something that took a different view. And it's really, really interesting. But their findings were that the happiest people in the world were Latin Americans. So which one is right? I mean, I say both. It really depends on how you define happiness. If you think happiness is how people see their lives, then the Swiss are the happiest people in the world. If you're thinking about happiness being defined maybe by how people live their lives through experiences, such as how much they smile or laugh, enjoyment, feeling treated with respect every day, then the happiest people in the world are Latin Americans. So the World Happiness Report, this is how people see their lives. So when they're looking at their own life, they're gauging it. It comes to the 0 to 10 scale, like I shared with you before, 0 being the worst possible life, 10 being the best possible life. The Positive Experience Index, the PEI, is a little different. Those wealthy countries might not always be at the very top, and the poorest countries won't always be at the bottom when it comes to ranking them. If, for example, you look on the left-hand side to the PEI, Guatemala is one of the poorest countries in the world, yet it's tied for second place on the Positive Experience Index, which is so interesting. The Positive Experience Index would ask questions to the effect of, did you feel rested today? Were you treated with respect all day? Did you smile or laugh a lot? So what they were asking each group was different. It was how people see their lives versus how people view their lives. So it's definitely two different approaches on what happiness means to people. And it really introduces that idea that maybe if your country is a wealthy country, that might not be the determining factor. So that idea of how money in your country's income can really influence a life brings up an idea which I found really interesting when looking at it, which was the developed versus developing countries. There's a gentleman by the name of Richard Easterlin, and he has been studying the concept of national happiness since the early 1970s, and he created with his findings the Easterlin paradox. And what that is, it's a life satisfaction data collected from 37 different countries, collected over various time periods from 12 to 34 years up until 2005. The sample included nations that were both developed as well as developing. And what he came to realize that happiness and income are positively correlated. There was no fighting that fact, but he did say that over time, happiness does not necessarily increase when a country's income increases. So, remembering a bit earlier in the presentation, what makes people happy wouldn't necessarily be those material things or monetary values. The Time Survey and the Positive Experience Index both supported that. It was more about the experience, not necessarily what you could physically get. So now that we have taken a look at what can and cannot make people happy, let's move forward to how best this cultural knowledge could be used in real-world applications. Let's take learning about it and put it into the real world, successfully or maybe not so much. So earlier we had mentioned the idea that happiness could be represented by a smile. If everyone smiled, then everyone could be happy, right? I mean, if you see a smile, that's going to make you happier than potentially seeing a frown or a stone-cold expression. The CEO and president of RW3 co-wrote a wonderful book called Managing Across Cultures, and within the book, they discuss how the business wants into Germany. Walmart chose to transplant their American style directly into Germany. This is one that's very informal, friendly, egalitarian. They took 85 stores that were staffed with employees from a previous German company, and those employees donned the iconic blue Walmart smocks and greeted every customer with a friendly smile and a warm greeting upon entering the store. So now we fast forward to less than 10 years later in 2006, and Walmart is announcing its billion-dollar loss. It's closing the stores. I mean, what happened? This is Walmart. They know what they're doing. They're a successful business model, represented all over the world. It's gained them $144 billion in net worth. I mean, these are people that have known what they're doing, and they've had success. So why did it not translate? Well, it wasn't really just one cultural misstep that happened here. You need to get into maybe a German mindset, which is definitely more formal. They value the hierarchical approach, and the smiles are generally reserved for people that they know and are familiar with. So the Walmart practice of having that smile was viewed as presumptuous and intrusive. This was leading customers to have complaints of being uncomfortable, and even customers complaining of feeling harassed when they came into the store. This also translated not even just to the customers, but to the employees. The German employees were expecting a formal leadership. That's what they're used to. So they were having feelings of embarrassment when it came to the very laid-back, playing on the even field. It was definitely on both parts. You could see this cultural awareness was lacking. Those are just a couple of the examples of why Walmart wasn't as successful. But harassment, embarrassment, I'm making a generalization here, but those aren't terms that people are going to list alongside of happy and those good feelings. Those are definitely on two separate sections there. Walmart was a prime example of a situation that could have had a remarkably different outcome with just a bit of cultural inclusion and awareness. Because happiness is so individualistic, it's really important to remember that when building any relationship, personal or professionally, you really need to take that time to learn and understand what makes every individual happy, as well as how to portray that happiness so that it's culturally relevant. What works best in one culture will not necessarily transfer effectively into another. And Walmart did us a great service by being our example for the day. So what have you done? What are some examples? I'd love for you all to think. Sean and I are both going to share some examples here, but we'd love to hear from you as well. But what are some examples of maybe that you've seen or you've been a part of yourself where you've seen happiness transcend those cultural borders? You know, this can be a professional or a personal situation, either or. I have one. I used to work at an elementary school, and we had a new student coming from Barbados, and his mother and grandmother had called previously to see if they could bring in a special lunch for the classmates. And they came in and they brought macaroni pie, which is a fabulous dish. It's macaroni and cheese. It comes in the shape of a pie. It has a delicious crust cheese on top, and the kids were so happy. The students were so excited to have one of their favorite foods in a different way. It was new and exciting, and they were asking their new student and their new friend at this point all these questions, and you could just see him, all of those nerves that he may have had as a first day in a new school were slowly going away, and he was excited to share about something that he knew so well. They also ended up doing a coconut cookie dish where everyone got to decorate their own, and it was just really great to see that connection transcend those boundaries. It was absolutely wonderful. Sean, do you want to share yours?
Yeah, I have an example as well, and if you guys think of anything that you would like to share as I'm talking now, please go ahead and plug that into the questions area. We'd love to hear from you. But I remember a time when I was with a client who was visiting from Asia, and I invited her to dinner. And being an American, the relationship style that we looked at earlier in this webinar that Devin pointed out, Americans tend to be more transactional, more task-focused. So I went into that dinner happy that I was completing this important client meeting, which was to have dinner and to discuss business. And that made me happy. That made me very happy because that's something that we do as a service-oriented companies, we take our clients out to dinner. But that's about all that we typically do in an American context. Now, my client, being from Asia, had a different sense for how she wanted to spend her time, and she told me during our dinner how excited that she was to be in New York City, how hopeful she was that she would be able to go out and see Central Park, the Empire State Building, all these different sites. She also very subtly told me that, it was her first time. She didn't know anyone in New York City. She didn't know how to navigate very well. She was afraid that she was going to get lost. And as I'm sitting there thinking to myself, she's saying all of this stuff. She's from Asia, a more interpersonal relationship culture. So I realized almost at the end of our dinner that maybe I should offer to take her out in the city and to help guide her so that she can do some of the stuff that she was probably hoping to do, but she had no one to help her. So I graciously then offered to take her out the next day, and we ended up spending a full day together. I took her to Central Park, and the part that made me realize that she was so delighted and so pleased to not only spend time building trust with me as a business partner, as a vendor to their organization, she posted a photo of us on Facebook and was just so happy to say, look at this, to her friends. I got to spend time with a real New Yorker, and it really made her happy. But, it was a little bit more than I was, comfortable with doing. I don't spend full days with clients doing sightseeing. It's not the norm in the U.S. So it was a way for me to adapt, to stretch myself a bit. But it also was a huge lesson in, helping others to achieve that level of happiness within a business context. And needless to say, the relationship is strengthened because of that. So that's my example, Devin.
That was a very good one, Sean. That was great. And the point of sharing the examples is, I think when you hear those stories and you can relate on whatever level it is, you really start to recognize maybe what you hadn't seen before, and you can start to incorporate that, being aware and utilize that in the rest of your interactions wherever they may take you. So I think those examples were definitely more genuine as opposed to the Walmart example of forced happiness, I guess I would call it, that didn't work out so well. So definitely better to be genuine and really appreciate it as opposed and gauge. Sean's example was great. It wasn't something he was planning on doing, but he recognized that she had that interest in it and was really great to cater to that. So let's move on to some keys for happiness. What makes people the happiest we've talked a lot about, and I think that the following list that we have here is a great condensed version and a way for you to remember these. So the first one, these are pulled from a study as well, where more than 6,000 men and women were surveyed and asked all these different questions, and they followed them for 20 years. So it was they always followed up with these same participants and were able to compile this wonderful list. The first I'd like to say is it's that sense of enthusiasm and that hopefulness, truly being engaged. Now what brings on those feelings and practices, it's going to vary from person to person, but this can be found, by simple observation or even asking someone. A lot of times we shy away from the direct questions, but sometimes that's where you're going to get the best answers. The second is the perspective that good things will happen. One's actions account for the good things that occur in your life. And I do want to side note there are definitely cultures out there that believe that what happens for the most part is out of their hands. So we refer to this in our control dimension, whether it's internal or external control of what happens. So the perception of how much control people have or what they think they have over their own lives and destiny. So an example of internal control would be countries like the United States or Denmark. They have a very internal belief of control. What they do is responsible for what they have and what is happening. Whereas someone that has belief in the, or ranks on the external side of that dimension would be Vietnam or Yemen. They're going to believe that it's a little bit out of their hands and there's something else that's guiding their path. The third key to happiness that we have here today is it's reaching back to that idea again of family and friends. You know, it's that people connection that's bringing out feelings of happiness and supporting you, and just, you know, simply sometimes through being there, verbally, non-verbally. It's all depending on who you are as a person and what you really surround yourself with. And lastly, for the final key to happiness that we have, is that knowing that things are eventually going to look up again. And you can help that, you know, choosing healthy behaviors, you know, being physically active, eating well, and avoiding risky behaviors. These are all steps that you can take and be aware of to lead to that happiness represented in your life and those around you. So now we have one of my favorite photos. I just love it. But we are now at our personal action planning. So this is all about where you can go for resources and ways to maybe take the learning further than just today and what we've done in our short time together. We've looked at so far what can make people happy, how to identify happiness, what influences happiness, and as well as some ways to encourage happiness across those cultural borders. And it is really important, and I want to share that it's great to understand other people in other cultures, countries, but it's also really important to understand yourself. And by taking that time to invest in understanding yourself, you can really then recognize what you're seeing in someone else. So it's definitely valuable to understand where you're coming from, what makes you happy, and then you can see that in someone else as well.
I have one thing to share from the audience before Devin moves on here, which I think builds on this idea of personal action planning. One of our participants told us that she's lately been participating in a laughter yoga class with people from different countries, and the way that the teacher gets everyone to laugh really has broken the ice between a very diverse group of people. So I thought that was an interesting way to get you know, a cross-cultural or an intercultural group to feel closer to each other and to, you know, enjoy the class together through some form of, I guess, humor. But I would be curious to know how that humor works, because we often say that humor doesn't translate. So we need to find, you know, ways of being humorous that come across in, you know, ways that are understandable across cultures. But laughter yoga.
That's a really, I like the idea. It kind of takes the seriousness out of meeting people and those interactions. It kind of adds that silly, lighthearted approach. That's really cool. I've never heard of that, and I would definitely be interested in seeing that firsthand. Thanks for sharing. That was wonderful. So when it comes to resources, there's definitely so many out there, and that's wonderful. And it's definitely something that we utilize, of course, here at Culture Wizard, because we definitely have an online platform as well as the instructor-led trainings. But there's definitely the tools out there. It's all about finding them. We've referenced a few of our own. We've used the Culture Calculator today, some information from our country profiles on 155 countries. And there's definitely sources out there. It's all about finding the style that you like, what reaches your learning style the best, and of course making sure it's a credible source. It's always best to make sure that you're hearing the same thing. There's definitely different opinions that go into a lot of things, so definitely take the awareness to interpret what you're getting for information. And then people. This is my favorite resource. People are everywhere. There's 7 billion people in the world. I mean, everyone has their own story and their own experiences, and if you can tap into that as a resource, I mean, you're unstoppable. You're going to learn so much, and you're going to build such valuable connections, and those relationships are so important, and that leads us back to the happiness. I mean, it's the people that are making people happy. So it's really great. They're such a great resource, and sometimes people don't think that they can go to their friend for some information, but maybe they have a friend that has this great experience that would really connect with you. So definitely start looking at, be aware of that. And then, I mean, we're in an age of technology. 3-year-olds at this point can log on to most technological devices and help you out. It's amazing. Information is literally at your fingertips. So it's all about the way that you use it and where you feel comfortable. But looking at the media is a great way to stay up to date on, current news and current happenings all over the world. I really love TED Talks. I think they're a really neat way to get different people's ideas and perceptions and life stories. And they have every topic you can imagine, so that's for me, always really great to use. And then there's always movies and music. I think those are one of the most effective ways to reach so many ages. It's a really great cultural representation, and it makes it a fun, lighthearted way to take in that information, which I enjoy music and watching movies anyway, so if you can add that beneficial side of cultural awareness, that just makes it even better, which is wonderful. So this is towards the end of our time today, and I'd like to hear a little bit from those that we have for participants today, maybe anything that you heard or something kind of struck a chord in your head of something you might take away from today or something you would share with someone. And I think of these webinars as, I'm trying to give you useful information, but I also learn from you guys as well. I never would have learned about laughing yoga. So that's definitely a new one for me. So I'd love to take a few moments to share some things here and maybe something that you now know who you might ask to be a resource, something along those lines.
So again, if you want to use the questions area, we're happy to answer any questions about this topic of happiness across cultures, about what we do at RW3 Culture Wizard. If you have anything specific that you'd like to ask about the research that Devin put into this webinar, go ahead and type in your question into that questions area. And interestingly, we have an update about laughing yoga. There are no jokes in laughing yoga. It's simply where you're asked to laugh, and everyone just starts laughing. There's nothing that prompts it, apparently, other than that. So
I really want to see this. I really want to see that. It has to be in New York City. It has to be all over.
Sure we can find it here. Yeah.
I definitely want to look into that one. That sounds really interesting.
I see here that someone was really happy to actually learn the word emotional vitality as part of those keys to being happy. Thank you for that comment.
That's a good one. That's a really great list. It kind of condenses our learning from the day, and it's a very helpful list.
All right, well, I will take the absence of questions as a sign that everyone is happy with how we've gone so far. So I'll pass it back to you, Devin, to close.
Great. I do want to I've tried so hard, I wanted to include music in some way into this presentation today. And I'll play you, it's just a 30-second clip in a moment, but I really love this quote from Mother Teresa that reads, "Let no one come to you without leaving better and happier." And I think that really represents what we've talked about today. It's all about that interaction with people and how you can come out better and happier through those connections. So I thought it was a great quote to kind of summarize our time that we spent together. And I want to play this, so humor me. I'm thinking many of you may have heard it, but we'll see here. All right, I don't know if any of you had heard that song, but I love it. There's some great videos online of cultures and every different country you can imagine dancing along to that song, and it's just so fun to watch, and the scenery and the people, and they kind of get fairly excited, so it's really great, and I wanted to include that just for fun on this. But I also wanted to take this time to really thank everyone for coming today and participating. I know we definitely had you guys pretty active here with comments and polls and questions, but I really appreciate that. And we definitely all took away something, hopefully, and I want to thank Young CULTURE for the opportunity to be able to connect with you and to kind of invest into this great topic, and hope that you're able to take something into your lives. So I'd love for, Diana and Sean to also.
Yeah, thank you very much as well for inviting us, Diana and Veronique, for putting this together. We hope that this builds nicely towards Finland and towards the Congress later this summer. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and also from me, thank you both for the great webinars. It was really, really great with all the interactive modules. And yeah, also thank you for all of you for listening. And we are looking forward to our further webinars and of course to the Congress. Yeah, and Sean and Devin, thank you again. It was really a great webinar.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening or day wherever you are.
Thank you. Thank you.